Hi there, my name is Dr. Socrates. I've been an Arknights doctor since launch, but my true pride and joy with this game is my work on video guides and a mini documentary on Reclamation Algorithm, Arknights' base building and sandbox spin-off mode. Now my next video was supposed to be another guide on RA, since a lot of things have changed since launch, and I would have loved to cover it all when it all came out, but I kind of fell off the face of the earth for a few of those months because real-life obligations hit, and you can't really do much about those. However, watching Tobo here have one of the most justified crash outs I've ever seen hit a little too close to home. You see, ever since this mode's been out, people have always been joking, "Oh, RA's the Endfield beta! It's Endfield before Endfield, Lamau! Base building prepping us for Endfield!" And I'm like, yeah, okay, plays kinda similarly here, sure, you got me. Base building, yeah, haha. But now, at the end of June 2025, Tobo releases his video, and there's a few talking points in there that have me feeling a sense of deja vu I wish I didn't have.
Nearly all of them said something along the lines of, what if I don't care about the event? What if I want to just get the rewards and be done with it? They didn't even enjoy the game, they just wanted the rewards that came after it. You get to choose where the ziplines go, but you have to set them up yourself. You can't just have them without building them. Nonetheless, he is right. Those demands for blueprints will grow louder and louder because gacha players only want to eat fast food, the meal without the responsibility of cooking it. And to build on the
Oh man. See, here's the thing. I've seen all of these things when people talk about Reclamation Algorithm. It's almost uncanny how similar the attitudes can get when I see people talking about the game mode or asking for help for it on various places. It's not like the game mode is flawless, of course. I have my fair share of qualms about it, even though it is my favorite game mode. But there's still no shortage of fellow doctors that get stuck, still find themselves confused after consulting guides like mine, or just play for the rewards and dip. So, is history gonna repeat itself here? Did RA crawl so Endfield could run and trip over itself in the process? Honestly, I've been itching to talk about this and some other thoughts I've had about RA for a while, so I'd like to take a step back, talk about what RA did before, and give my thoughts on it while the iron is still hot, to help us think about what all of this could mean for Endfield's reception and its consequences. For starters, let's look at rewards and progression. One of the most derogatory attributions towards gacha gamers that Tobo levies in his video is the notion that they're only playing to farm rewards, and that they demand games make it easier for them to maintain their account, while they half-heartedly play a handful of other competitors in the market at the same time. That alone is a super loaded declaration right there, and I have felt this immensely in RA's history. You see, everyone who has even a remote interest in RA has probably seen the glowstick method at least be mentioned as a way to generate reward shop points to buy it all out without having to, hold on, let me see here. Without having, actually play the game mode. In fact, it was one of the reasons why I decided to make my dinky little PowerPoints in the first place. Now, gacha gaming demands resources. I get it. I truly do. It's a grind, and everyone's fighting for scraps here. RA is sanity-free, and technically the largest source of sanity-free stuff that accounts have access to these days. But if you choose to do this, I think it's one of the most underwhelming, boring resource grinds you could ever do in Arknights. And I would even say that I would rather have you return to RA later and play it normally, even if you really need the resources. And believe me, I've been through some really brutal grinds. You're looking at someone who unironically enjoys old-school RuneScape. My gaming habits aside, if you consider the fact that Tales Within the Sand doesn't let you use support units, you're in for a bad time even just setting up the cheese to begin with, since you'll be thrust into an unfamiliar experience with barely enough to work with. This is especially true if you're hot off the heels of 3-8, the minimum unlock requirement, as I've gone over in a previous video. Most accounts at this point are not only underprepared from an operator strength standpoint to take on RA confidently, but a lot of the more advanced enemies that cameo in RA haven't been fought yet in an easier environment to learn their quirks and counters. So why subject yourself to that? Why make the game mode seem worse than it is? Resources? You want resources that you're going to be getting eventually anyway? My fellow doctors in Yaragonder, this game mode is permanent. It is not going anywhere. Heaven forbid you play something to try and enjoy it rather than to snap up all the little treats it gives you before it goes away, apparently. You ask me, I'm going to tell you straight up. RA wasn't made to be a thing to be quickly consumed, like the fast food analogy that Tobo mentioned a CN response describing. RA is a full-course meal by that standard. It's not just there to feed you, it's an experience to be had in and of itself, to be enjoyed as a whole, and not just for its nutritional value. It mixes the tower defense core gameplay of standard Arknights and blends it with a little bit of its real-time strategy roots to create a base-building campaign that serves as a wonderful capstone challenge to put all of the skills you've built in the main game and other game modes to the test. While doing so, the sandbox nature of the mode allows you more freedom with how you choose to go about things, provided you're able to work for it. To put it simply, my original guide's thumbnail put it best: more than just a reward farm. And that's what I hope Endfield ends up being, more than just a gacha game. Just like RA, Endfield tries new things outside the framework it exists in. For RA, that'd be the vanilla game of Arknights, which itself was a diamond in the rough for gachas, but for Endfield, we're talking about the greater 3D gacha game market. The problem, of course, is that it's the greater 3D gacha game market. Real money is on the line, and the constant Sisyphean task of topping the revenue charts is placing constant pressure on Hypergriff to compromise their own vision for, supposedly, a bigger slice of that pie. The stakes weren't this big with RA. Arknights is in a good spot regardless, and at worst you just have what we've got now. An unpopular game mode with poor tutorials, and little incentive to play it other than main game rewards. But for Endfield, unless they subsidize it with Arknights gifts if you link your account or something, it won't have the carrot on a stick progression rewards to lean on. All it will have is the inherent fun of its own gameplay, and the typical toolbox of gacha game mechanics to keep people playing past the first impression. If Endfield wishes to stand on its own, it needs to be able to learn from the consequences of RA's shortcomings, so that it overcomes the reputation of just another gacha game. To that end, being a standout title in a sea of sameness comes with its own trade-offs. Because Endfield has chosen a genre mix that is inherently more technical and abstract to the so-called casual audience, more weight has to be given to player decisions and the consequences behind them. This brings about trouble when you consider Tobo's statement that
gacha gamers have been taught their actions won't matter, and therefore, gacha gamers have come to expect their actions will not matter.
this has already hit hard in RA, as you might imagine. RA is the first time that Arknights has explored the build-your-own-maze portion of the tower defense genre gameplay in earnest, and with that comes a lot of player freedom. Of course, this isn't a sandbox where you get infinite sand, but I think the challenge of building up your dream base is what makes it compelling. It's the same reason why people might enjoy Minecraft Survival more than they do Minecraft Creative Mode. Scarcity is what makes the accomplishment of building something that much more satisfying because of the work you took to make it exist. I mean, it just hits different when you know that you managed to build a house, but the process of doing so created multiple stories of risking life and limb just to get light sources for your fancy chandelier. Unfortunately, the satisfaction of build it yourself clashes with the expectations that the rest of the game has set up by the time players get around to trying RA. Vanilla Arknights sets up this expectation of perfection with perfect clear rewards, but doesn't put too much weight behind it since you can just come back later with stronger units if you're just here for the story. Integrated strategy starts to mess with this a little, but you're still backed up by the support unit system and are still railroaded forward through the standard protect the blue box gameplay loop you know and love. It's just got a little bit of roguelike spice added in so that losing a run isn't too painful when the next run could pop off even harder. But RA? You have an entire set of unknown maps ahead of you with resources to gather and spend. Your options are ever expanding and you're not quite sure when the next deadline raid will spawn. You might be able to preview enemies before deploying now, but your objectives are no longer simply defend the blue boxes. Tower defense turns into tower offense with hunting, gathering, and even protracted siege missions against fortresses and bosses. Perfection isn't necessarily needed or expected all the time, but it's hard to tell, especially in the early game, whether or not you're getting stronger, breaking even, or doomed before you can even realize it. And, to top it all off, no support units or random chances for something that can carry you through make this a nightmare for an account hot off the heels of 3-8. It's all on you, and when you compound this with RA's poor tutorialization, especially if you're not used to the 4X genre loops of explore, expand, exterminate, and exploit, It's hard to blame people for not feeling confident in executing their plans when they're unable to identify what a good plan looks like in the first place. Endfield seems like it could be a good opportunity to learn from this. I didn't have access to the alpha or beta, so I just had to take people's word for it, but it seems like the expanded tutorialization is a step in the right direction in terms of giving players the handholds that they need, if they need it. But in RA's case, I know for certain that the pacing of the early game is definitely not satisfying for a lot of people. I've seen folks in the RA channel on Discord who still feel bewildered after watching guides seemingly blind to the payoff of accomplishment that's right around the corner but just out of reach. I sincerely hope that this mistake doesn't repeat again with Endfield, for the consequences of losing players in the early game after launch matters more than ever. Speaking of guides, I'm concerned about what Endfield guides from content creators might look like, especially with the discussion around blueprints. Guides that describe stuff like collectible locations or boss fights are probably non-negotiable and are straightforward enough. A collectible is either there or it isn't, and there might be more than one way to fight a boss, but there's usually only one way a boss fights back. More technical guides for the factory loop, however, I can see some pitfalls already from RA. You might have noticed that there isn't really a one-size-fits-all HQ or outpost layout you can copy for RA. Many can offer suggestions, and you could certainly copy my base layout, but it doesn't change the fundamental fact that this game mode is so open-ended that it's better for players to consider for themselves how much their own budget is, which operators they have, and what enemies they want to fight before committing to their own layout plan. Those needs change over time, too, further complicating how difficult it is to make a guide on it, especially if you're a bigger YouTuber like EchoGen or KyostinV. They're not bailing you out on this one. It's no surprise, then, that this contributes to the YouTube guide scene being quite barren for RA, pretty much boiling down to myself, the Glowstick guides, a select handful that did a bunch of map-by-map clears like JFun or Sunny Senpai, or challenge pushers like Entropy issuing pearls of wisdom to the select few walking in their footsteps. I'm not trying to imply that the alternate timeline where we did get an RA guide explosion would change things, but I do want to bring this up in contrast with the typical guides made for gacha games. They're quick, to the point, one-and-dones that you can blitz through to maintain your account. Ugh. Thanks to some clever design and balancing though, a lot of Arknights guides in general are still resilient to being optimized to the point of no player responsibility. If you look at higher rarity, easy clear guides especially, it's pretty likely thanks to the gacha system and resource grind that your account might not have the exact same operators on hand. But, thanks to the way that each operator fills a role, they can often be upgraded or downgraded as needed to fit your needs, while also providing you an opportunity to learn their roles and be a smarter player as a result. Conversely, in factory builders like Factorio and Satisfactory, we aren't exactly pulling the gacha mines for random machine blueprints. This makes variance in progression much less likely, and suboptimal substitutions are only something that you'll see in challenge runs. Once you know of an optimal layout, whether that's through honest experimentation or through copying someone else's homework, that's it. There's likely little to no room for adaptation and learning unless Endfield has an idea to encourage that through gameplay. Seeing as Endfield is going to be a live service game, I'm sure that maybe they'll throw in an update that adds something to shake things up in the factory loop. Maybe a little RNG gating, or perhaps something else that adds variance from player to player. Sadly, I'm a bit of a sober realist of what I think's going to happen though. If Hypergriff doesn't implement the countermeasures I just described, and layout copying becomes rampant with or without a blueprint system, it's probably more enticing to be the view farmer that spoils it all, getting comments like, "Oh my god, this layout works great, thanks for not being useless," rather than the earnest teacher that quote-unquote wastes 5 minutes talking about why it works. It reminds me of what happened to Mob Farm and Redstone tutorials for the technical side of Minecraft. Oftentimes, the most viewed designs might actually be copied from someone else, which might be made for an older version without much explanation as to why and how it worked. Without fail, you'd eventually get people in the comments asking why it wasn't working as well for them, or reporting breakage with a game update that rebalanced things. It was only the guides that featured original or collaborative designs that were truly valuable to me. They would cite their sources, explain why things worked, and even provide options for you if reasonable. These were the guides that ended up being the most future-proof, equipping viewers with the know-how to repair, modify, or even improve the designs that they learned for themselves. I'm hoping that when Endfield is out, we get some of those guides that are written robustly enough to pull that off too. The consequences of an underdeveloped tutorial and guide video scene was already apparent with RA, and Endfield is Hypergriff's shining opportunity to redeem themselves and dodge a repeat of this sinking their game for good. Wait a minute, did I just say dodge? Oh boy. Right, let's address the elephant in the room. You want to know what the RA parallel for dodging is? It's raids, or more specifically, the ability to dodge them. I won't have you watch through Tobo's tirade again, but the gist of his argument for the sake of mine is that dodging it as a mechanic should be handled with care and consideration during the development process with regards to how it fits and impacts the game as a whole. Otherwise, its inclusion or over-tuning could ultimately be meaningless or even detrimental to the fun or challenge of the gameplay experience. If you give out the crutch of a dodge roll just because, the rest of the game needs to be balanced with that in mind, and that, you guessed it, has consequences. Some might be good, some might be bad, but regardless, a thoughtful developer gives these things extra attention beforehand so that they consider things to add, change, or remove afterwards to address issues and keep their plans intact. Assuming, of course, they're at liberty to do so. Now let me tell you about Peaceful Mode. First and foremost, this is not a slight against anyone playing RA in Peaceful Mode. It exists for a reason, and it's a good option to have. I will not shame you for using it, and if you see anyone saying that this video shames Peaceful Mode users, you will know that they either didn't watch the video and you can safely ignore their comments, or that they are spreading misinformation for whatever reason since, I don't know, I guess they don't like me and they want to be me. It's the internet, whatever. Arknights is at its best when you have options and agency. Take a wild guess at why Contingency Contract was such a popular challenge event format despite it being very hard. Peaceful Mode is a good thing to have, especially in a sandbox mode. And even I used it myself after completing main story just to make producing videos and gathering B-roll footage faster. But just like with dodging, messing with this fundamental part of the game mode has important consequences to consider. One second. Hello? Oh, what's that? It just removes the RNG and day threshold raids outright? Okay, nothing else changes about the mode besides the normal difficulty modifiers. Nothing else is rebalanced with this in mind. Not even the quests. I see. Well, alright, let me be blunt here. Reclamation Algorithm was never balanced with Peaceful Mode in mind. You want to know how I know this? There's a certain kind of question that gets asked in the RA channel in the Arknights official Discord every so often that goes something along the lines of, I can't progress the main quest, all the other maps are blocked off, what do I do? They'll send a screenshot of their overworld map and I can instantly tell where they're being blocked by and why. Can you? Here's the answer. It's their day count. One of the main story quests in RA has a prerequisite to reach day 30 of survival. Surviving to that day also independently triggers a unique Amiri army boss raid as a first major challenge to your campaign that checks if you're truly ready to take on what's ahead. By now, on normal or the default challenge difficulty, raids would have spawned to slow down your progress, forcing you to spend several days of act points intercepting them in the field, at your outposts, or even at HQ if things don't work out. This compounds with needing to spend more days gathering resources to replenish the stockpiles between raids and for future upgrade projects. But since Peaceful removes all randomly spawned and day count based raids, these act points are freed up to use towards progressing faster than intended. Sure, you could probably achieve this state on normal and challenge difficulties if you knew what you were doing, but since people are asking the question of why they're stuck, it's safe to assume that they do not in fact know what they are doing, and that the game was not rebalanced with this easier economy in mind. Keeping things the same would be the easier way for Hypergriff, and that is pretty much what they've done here. It's not like Hypergriff's been bad at adding difficulty options before. Contingency Contract remains one of its finest examples of having granular control over how difficult you want your experience to be. But the implementation of Peaceful Mode in RA is so baffling that it's almost like Hypergriff made a difficulty concession that majorly compromises the original vision of their experience without addressing it. Sound familiar? Alright, look, again, I don't necessarily think Peaceful Mode is a bad thing. It's still doing its job perfectly fine here by letting people who don't want the pressure of extra raids still enjoy the game mode the way they like it. That's great, that's huge. And while I can't speak to first-hand experience with dodging since I didn't get in the Endfield Alpha or Beta, I'm willing to assume in good faith that it was doing a game mechanical job well enough. However, because the campaign of RA was never balanced for peaceful mode, or the content that the expansions added for that matter, the experience is forever changed for the better and or for the worse. You could say that this is a little apples to oranges comparing this with regards to Endfield and dodging here, but my main point is that giving the players what they ask for doesn't always necessarily bring a better result, even if it is easier or more accessible. As Tobo states, accessibility must not undermine identity. For what it's worth, I can't entirely blame Hypergriff for the lack of polish here. It takes a lot of work to rebalance around new options, bringing with it new complications to consider when redesigning. And sadly, that's the way it's going to be forever. With the release of Unectes' module, there are no further updates to RA unless they surprise us, meaning nothing will be done to change the state of the pacing issues peaceful mode creates. Aside from new operators being possibly able to cheese things, it is what it is. But as for Endfield, they still have a lot of room on the table to address the consequences of game design before accidentally turning it into a game for everybody, which ends up being a game for nobody. So, bottom line, how will Hypergriff get people to play Endfield anyway? Will it become a mere source for Arknights rewards just for playing, like RA? Is it going to stick to its guns and just be satisfying to play for its core audience? Are they going to ramp up the tutorials and push content creators to make guides to avoid what happened with RA? Will they overtune the dodge like they implemented peaceful mode? I don't have answers for all of these rhetorical questions, but I can at least reflect one last time on what's happened with RA already. It's often joked that there are only a handful of people that have played Reclamation Algorithm, and the numbers, sadly, do reflect that. In fact, it's so bad apparently that we have our own trolls about it too. You know who you are, don't feed them. Regardless, if Endfield is truly going to be the next RA in spirit, it would be a real shame to inherit this unpopularity curse in the process. They could shake hands over sharing the experience of getting memed on just because they tried to do something other than the industry bog standard. If you ask me though, I don't think Endfield should compromise itself in a bid to avoid this fate. It's better to be the happy few than the mediocre many. I say this to describe both the game being faithful to its own direction versus copying other titles, and to its core fanbase being satisfied enough to grow itself without just relying on bandwagoning and tactics that could work on any other game. I realize it's easy to take this phrase the wrong way and think I'm advocating for elitism, and if that's your takeaway even after listening to my nuance here, I can't really do anything about that. But I'd like to think that if you're super happy about a game, there comes a point where your happiness is infectious to the point where other people can't help but wonder what you're up to. And by that time, I would hope that fans in those positions are happy and experienced enough to be willing and able to do their best to bring others into the fold. This idea isn't new. Frost, ex-Second Wind critic who self-describes as a professional wrong opinion haver on video games, business, and culture, per his Twitter bio anyway, talked about when he bought Diablo because his coworker loved it so much that they had gotten a Diablo tattoo and talked ceaselessly about the lore. To quote, "That's what happens when you care about your core. The core cares about your game. If you don't care about your core, they don't care about your game, then I'm not leaving my cave." If Endfield compromises too much while trying to cater to its core audience, then there might not be those special fans enthusiastic enough to break the inertia and spread the good word. This has held true for so many titles looking back. Turns out, people really do like to see other people having fun and join in. You just can't take that for granted, is all. It's not to say that there shouldn't be any iteration and improvement. Things can get better over time when it comes to accessibility and accommodations, and this doesn't have to compromise the original thing. RA itself has already gone through a rebirth from its first iteration, and I think the game mode has strengthened because of it. It addressed the underdeveloped permanent progression system from the first time, but still kept the spirit of the first iteration's gameplay loop alive in strange territories. I think that's more brilliant than most people will give it credit for. They didn't have to bring RA back at all, but they did, and ultimately, that's why I'm still here despite being made fun of and everything else pulling me away. I love this game mode, and I'll keep making guides for it for as long as I'm willing and able to, in the hopes that others have at least a slightly better chance to love it too, flaws and everything. If Endfield can iterate in the right direction like this, I think it deserves the best chance to find its own set of core audience members, just as RA did finding me.
when it comes out, Endfield will have the benefit of Hypergryph's collective experience developing Arknights, its derivative game modes, Papucom, and X Astris. They've had the balls to shamelessly and confidently make their own spin on things before, quite literally in the case of Papucom. I just hope that with Endfield, they still have it in them to make manifest what only they could deliver in this modern media landscape. If RA crawled so that Endfield could run, I hope that Hypergryph takes the right lessons from their experiences and guides Endfield to run in the right direction, towards a bright future. Because if not, there will be consequences. Just like before.